Welcome to episode 79 of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we continue with the tales of Troy and the story of Glaucus and Diomedes. On the battlefield, Glaucus of Lycia, a grandson of Bellerophon, and Diomedes, son of Tydeus, had stormed forward from the ranks and were facing each other, eager for the struggle. When Diomedes saw his opponent at close quarters, he measured him with his eyes and said, "Who are you? I have not encountered you before, yet now I see you standing out from the rest. I must warn you that those who cross my path in war are destined to disaster. But should you be a god who has taken mortal shape, I renounce combat, for I do not wish to raise my hand against an immortal. If you are mortal, come, you shall not escape death." The son of Hippolochus replied, "Diomedes, why ask my lineage? We men are like leaves in the forest, which fall and are scattered in the wind, and in the spring the branches bud afresh. But if you wish to know, then my forebear was Aeolus, son of Helen, and he begot crafty Sisyphus. Sisyphus begot Glaucus, Glaucus Bellerophon, Hippoclocus, and I am his son. It is he who sent me against Troy that I might excel in battle and not disgrace my ancestors." When his opponent had ended, Diomedes thrust the shaft of his lance into the ground and spoke in a friendly voice. "Noble prince," he said, "we are bound by ties of hospitality from the days of our fathers. For 20 days, Onias, my grandfather, had your grandfather Bellerophon as a guest under his roof, and they honored each other with splendid gifts. My grandfather gave yours a crimson belt, and yours gave mine a golden cup with handles which I still have in my house. And so I must be your host in Argos, and you mine in Lycia. Should I ever journey there, let us avoid each other in the turmoil of battle. There are enough Trojans left for me to kill, and Argives enough for you to slay. Let us exchange weapons so that the other may see we are proud to be bound by these ties of old." And lightly they dropped from their chariots, took each other by the hand, and vowed friendship. But Zeus, who turned all that chanced in favor of the Achaeans, blinded the spirit of Glaucus, so that he exchanged his golden armor for the brazen cuirass of Diomedes. It was as if a man had been given 100 bullocks for only 9. Hector in Troy. Hector, meanwhile, had reached the beech tree of Zeus and the Scaean gates. Here the wives and daughters of the Trojans crowded around him and anxiously asked about their husbands, their sons, brothers, and kinsmen. He could not tell everyone what she wished to know, but counseled all to pray to the gods. Even so, what he had said filled many with gloom and anguish. And now he had come to his father's palace. It was a beautiful structure flanked by spacious colonnades. Within there 50 chambers with the walls of polished marble, one built close to the next. Here lived the sons of the king with their wives. On the other side of the inner court were 12 adjoining marble halls, which housed the king's daughters and their husbands. The whole was circled by a high rampart and was in itself a stately citadel. Here Hector met Hecuba, his mother, who was on her way to Laodice, the fairest of her daughters, and the one she loved most dearly. The aged queen hastened towards Hector, took him by the hand, and said, full of love and concern, "Son, how is it that you come to us in the midst of battle? It must be that the Argives are besetting us sorely, and that you have come to raise your hands to Zeus in supplication. Wait until I bring you wine, fragrant and rich, that you may pour a libation, and then refresh your own spirit with a sparkling draught, for nothing revives a weary fighter like wine." But Hector answered her, "Have no wine brought, dear mother, lest my mind blur and my limbs grow unsteady. Nor would I bring Zeus a libation with unclean hands. But you and the noblest woman in Troy shall go to the temple of Athene bearing incense, lay on the knees of the goddess your most beautiful robe, and vow a sacrifice to her of 12 heifers without blemish. If she will take pity on us, I meanwhile will go to summon my brother Paris to battle. I wish the earth would swallow him where he stands, for he was born to our destruction." The mother did as her son had asked. She entered the perfumed chamber where she kept the fair silken robes Paris himself had brought her from Sidon when he was journeying home with Helen by slow and devious ways. One of these, the most beautiful, worked in an intricate pattern, she took from the very bottom of the chest and went to the Acropolis, to the temple of Athene, accompanied by the noblest of the Trojan women, Theano, wife of Atenor, the Trojan priestess of Pallas, opened the house of the goddess. The women encircled the statue of Athene, lifted their hands to her, and made lament. Then Theano took the robe from the queen's hands, laid it on the knees of the image, and implored the daughter of Zeus, "Pallas Athene, protectress of cities, great and powerful goddess, shatter the spear of Diomedes. Let him fall headlong and writhe on his face in the dust before the gates of Troy. Have pity on this city, on the women and young children. In hope that you will do all this, we dedicate to you 12 unblemished heifers." But in her heart Pallas Athene refused the request. By this time Hector had arrived in the palace of Paris, which stood high on the Acropolis, near the king's palace and Hector's own, for both princes had their houses separate from that of Priam. In his hand Hector carried his spear. It was 11 cubits long, and the shaft, where it joined the brazen point, was bound with a ring of gold. He found his brother examining weapons and smoothing the curve of a bow. Helen sat among her women, directing them, and all were busily occupied with their day's work. When Hector saw his brother, he reproved him, saying, "It is wrong for you to loiter here at your ease. It is because of you that men are fighting before our walls. You, yourself, would blame anyone you saw idle at a moment such as this. Come, and help us to defend our city before it bursts into flames from the firebrands of the foe." Paris replied, "You are wrong to chide me, brother. I am sitting here idly because I am grieved. But now that Helen has warmly urged me to return to battle, I shall go. Wait until I gird on my armor, or if you want to go, I shall soon follow you." Hector answered nothing to this, but Helen said to him humbly, "O brother-in-law, I am indeed a woman who brings calamity in her wake. I wish the sea had closed over me before I set foot on the coast with Paris. But now that things are as they are, would I were the wife of a better man, of one who felt the disgrace and the contempt he has brought upon himself. He has no heart, and the fruit of his cowardice will not be long in coming. But enter, Hector. Come in and rest from those labors which, because of me and that idle husband of mine, now weigh heavily on your shoulders." "No, Helen," said Hector. "Do not bid me to be seated, for indeed I must not. My heart yearns to help the men of Troy. Your task shall be to fire Paris to action. Let him hasten so that he may join me before I am beyond the city walls. But first I must go to my own house to see my wife, my little son, and my servants." So said Hector, and hurried away. But he did not find his wife at home. When she heard that the Trojans were hard pressed and the Argives were winning, the women watched the doors told him she left the palace beside herself with anxiety to climb one of the towers, and the nurse had to carry the child after her. Quickly Hector turned and again traversed the cities of Troy. When he reached the Scaean gates, Andromache, his wife, the lovely daughter of Aetion, king of Thebes and Cilicia, came swiftly toward him. A serving woman followed her, clasping to her breast the boy, Astyanax, radiant as a star. The father looked at his son with a quiet smile, but Andromache went up to him with tears in her eyes, took his hand tenderly, and said, "Surely your courage will be the death of you. Have you no pity on your child or on your unhappy wife whom you will soon leave widowed? If I am deprived of you, it were best I sank into this earth. Achilles slew my father. My mother fell by the arrow of Artemis, and my 7 brothers were also done to death by the son of Peleus. You are all I have, Hector. You are father, mother, and brother to me, and so take pity on me and stay here in the tower. Do not make an orphan of your child. Place your battalions over there on that hill overgrown with fig trees, for there the wall is open to attack and easiest to scale. 3 times already the bravest of the Argives, the 2 Ajaces, Idomeneus, the son of Atreus, and Diomedes have turned their steps in that direction, guided perhaps by the words of a soothsayer or by their own tuition. Tenderly, Hector replied, "All this weighs heavily on me too, beloved, but I should disgrace myself before the men and women of Troy if I stayed here like a coward and watched the battle from afar. Nor does my own courage permit me such a course. It has always driven me to the front. My heart tells me the day will come when sacrificed Troy shall lie in ruins, and Priam and all his people will be destroyed. But neither the sufferings of the Trojans, nor those of my own parents and brothers falling under the sword strokes of the Argives, will give me the pain I shall feel for you. An Achaean will carry you off into captivity. You will weep and lament. In Argos you will sit at the loom or fetch water, and someone seeing your tears may say, 'That was Hector's wife.' Let the burial mound cover me rather than that I should hear your moans when they take you away." So he spoke, and he held out his arms to the child. But the child screamed and hid his head in the nurse's breast, for he was frightened by his father's warlike appearance and by his brazen helmet with its terrifying crest of fluttering horsehair. Hector smiled at the child, took off the gleaming helmet, laid it on the ground, and kissed his little son and rocked him in his arms. Then he prayed to heaven, "Zeus and all the gods, let this boy become like his father, a leader of the people. Let him grow mighty and govern the city, and when he returns from battle laden with spoils, let them say, 'He is even braver than his father was.'" With these words, he laid his son in his wife's arms, and she pressed him to her, smiling through her tears. Hector sorrowfully stroked her head and said, "Do not be sad. No one will kill me if it is not my fate to die, but no mortal can escape his destiny. Go to your distaff and loom, and see to your women. The men of Troy must bear the brunt of this war, and most of all myself." And Hector set his helmet on his head, and he left her. Andromache went toward her palace, looking back many times and weeping tears of sorrow. When her women saw her, they too were overcome with sadness, and in his own palace Hector was mourned as though he was already dead. Paris did not delay. Armed with shining weapons of bronze, he strode through the city like a stately stallion which breaks loose from the halter when it has eaten its fill and races towards the river. He reached his brother just as he turned from Andromache. "I have kept you waiting, haven't I?" he called to Hector from afar. "I have made my elder brother wait because I did not come promptly enough." But Hector answered kindly, "My good brother, in fairness, I must say that you are a brave fighter, only that you often hang back and idle away the hours, and then it cuts me to the heart when I must listen while the Trojans, who have suffered so much for you, speak of you with derision. But we shall talk of all this another time, when we have chased the Achaeans from our coast. Sit at ease in the palace, and drain the cup of freedom." And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.